Welcome to another installment of Cracking Open, the podcast brought to you by the Sage Circle. In this series, I interview Sage Circle members to find out about their intuitive journey and development. Today's guest is Victoria, who shares with us how she experienced her intuition and healing abilities opening up while living in Russia in the 1980s, and how she began working with souls transitioning to the other side. Let's jump into Cracking Open.
This podcast is brought to you by the SAGE Method, the most comprehensive and down-to-earth intuitive development training available. Is this your year? Is it finally your time to increase your intuition, bring in more abundance, and experience the bliss you deserve? If yes, then join thousands of students across the world for a 7-week journey to uncover your natural, beautiful, and strong intuition. Visit us at thesagemethod.com for more information.
Welcome back to another episode of Cracking Open the podcast. I am super thrilled to be able to introduce to you Victoria. Hi, Victoria. Thank you for being here with me.
Hi, both. Thanks for having me. It's amazing to be here.
It's amazing to be able to connect like this. I absolutely love it. Thank you, Zoom. So let's jump right in. I am really, because I know a little bit about your journey, and so I'm excited to have you share it with everyone else. When were you first aware of your intuition? Tell me about how that first came to be for you.
Okay, so a little bit of a pre-story. I come from former USSR, growing up in the 80s there. And at the time, I was brought up an atheist, and that included not just any religion, but pretty much any notion of spirituality was not non-existent. On top of that, I come from a place where most value was put on the intellectual development that was praised and valued above everything else. So my feelings were not really allowed to be explored and expressed or felt. And so there was an interesting mix of being a highly intuitive kid who was not really allowed to feel any of it. So my first glimpse into, and at the same time, Russian and Ukrainian roots go into very deep mystical and magical traditions. So there was a lot of interesting mixed messages coming at me. So my first experience was with energy work, where I was 11 years old. My mom had severe migraines. A healer came from Moscow and did a bunch of juju on my mom's head, and I was like, "What is that?" I was just stunned, and I was like, something in me was just, oh my God, I need to do this. I want to learn to do this. The healer showed me what he was doing, so I started doing it. But at the time, I didn't know how to keep my valves open. So I was using up a lot of my own reserve rather than tapping into the flow of things. And so it was actually kind of detrimental. I was getting to the point of almost passing out while working on my mom's migraines. So while it was helping me, it was draining me. And so I had to stop for a while and kind of put that aside. At the same time, was always continued to be very interested in mystical traditions and just stories and things like that. Then at some point, my mom decided it was time for us to immigrate, to leave Ukraine and move to the USA. And she started the whole process of trying to get us out of there. We were trying to get to the US. And right around that same time, somebody introduced to me the notion of a pendulum. Take a string of yarn and attach it to a piece of bread.
A bread pendulum.
Yes, attach it to a piece of bread and put a pile of salt at the top and at the bottom on the table, and a pile of sugar at the right and on the left. And when it goes up and down, it's going to be a yes. And when it goes right and left, it's going to be a no.
I love that.
And just sit there and ask questions, yes and no questions. And I, of course, being the mystical kid that I am, I completely jumped on the whole thing. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can ask my bread questions.
Yes.
And so I made a pendulum out of string and bread and salt and sugar and started asking questions. And I was asking, one of my questions was about my great grandmother, who was, she was getting into her late years at that point. And I asked if she was gonna make it out of the crane with us, and I got a yes. And then I asked if she was gonna make it to the US, and I got a no. well, how is this possible? That doesn't make any sense, you know? And so, and then, you know, kid being a kid, at some point, then I just forgot all about it and left it, you know? And then as we were trying to get out of the country, the US closed its quota right before our noses. We ended up moving to Israel instead. And I spent 2 years in Israel, then moved to the US. Then my mom joined me in the US. My grandparents and my great grandma stayed in Israel, and that's where she passed away. So she never made it to the US.
Wow.
And she's one of my great guides at this point. And so
Yeah.
she's my daughter's middle name is in her honor, but
Yeah.
that's
I got chills. That's
yeah. So, and after that, already being here, I lived in New York for many years, and I went to NYU as a pre-med. And while I was at NYU, I realized that I was not going to become a doctor in the US, and instead I went to a skincare institute.
okay.
I was completely passionately in love with all the self-care and skin, and I had severe skin problems at the time, so something had to be done about it. So I went to Skincare Institute.
There you go.
And as I started putting my hands on people, things started to happen. Energy started to come through. People were feeling way deeper, having way deeper experiences than just skin. So I started diving into the world of holistic skincare. At the same time, 9/11 happened.
Ah,
And
yes.
yeah,
And you're in New York.
I was in New York. Now I was working for like a chiropractic slash holistic clinic across the street from the World Trade Center.
Oh my.
And I got fired from there 2 weeks before 9/11 happened. So,
Wow. There's some guidance from grandma in there, I think.
yeah, I think there were some major forces looking over me. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And then 2 weeks after 9/11, things started to unfold. I ran into a woman who was a part of a mystery school. And I was like,
Okay.
what is that? You
Okay.
know, and so she told me all about that. I ended up getting my path is the path of initiation, apparently. So I ended up getting initiated in a mystery school. That's just one of the stories. And then a week after that, I was suddenly a director of a healing center that just fell in my lap. And then this person walked into my life and said, I need to give you a Reiki attunement. I'm like, okay. So he gave me my first Reiki attunement. I slept for 14 hours after that attunement. I think my whole nervous system was completely rewired at that point. And so things started to really unfold in a really rapid manner after that. So in that patch of time when I was integrating my Reiki attunement, one of the amazing things that happened among many, many different experiences, but and this happened twice with two different people. One of them was I was on a date with a gentleman. I'm in my mid-20s at that point, you know. So
Yep.
we're hanging out in the woods on a date somewhere upstate New York, and he felt to me extremely spiritually condescending, and I was really struggling with the whole thing. But then we were out hiking, and then we fell asleep. We decided to take a nap, and in my dream, I had a dream, and in my dream, he was my spiritual teacher, and he was sharing a lot of very interesting and deep information with me. I was like, oh, okay, you know, so we were having this connection, and then we woke up and we looked at each other, and we both knew that we were in the same dream.
Wow.
Like he knew what he was talking to me about, and I like everything. We confirmed everything with each other, and we were in the same dream. So that kind of blew my mind, and I left it at that. Then a few months after, still the same phase in my life, I my apartment was very cold, New York winter. It was terrifyingly cold, and something was wrong with the heat. And so I desperately needed to get out of there and sleep somewhere else that night. And so a friend was kind enough to let me come over, and we hung out, and we fell asleep. I have a dream. In my dream, I was doing energy work on him. I was giving him a healing session. We wake up, he turns to me and he looks at me with these big wide eyes and he says, thank you. Apparently, we were in the same dream and he knew I was giving him energy work. Uh, those kinds of, that only happened twice to me, but it just completely blew my mind. It was out of the realm of like, no, this is not possible. How, what? So
That
that,
had to be, yeah, that had to be one of those moments where you're just like, it's so surreal.
yeah.
And I do love that the two times it happened, one is thank you. and the earlier one was the person that was, kind of condescending before the nap. Was he condescending after the nap? That would be my question.
Not really. I mean, things
Yeah.
definitely shifted. It was like, okay, something happened here. We kind of leveled up. I don't know. We did not continue dating after that, but that was definitely an interesting experience.
Maybe that was a gift from you to him. He needed to have that experience.
I think so. And for me, it was also, it was good for my, well, not good for my ego. It was good for me to get over my ego and be like, okay, this person actually does have something to teach me.
Yes, exactly. I love that.
That leads me into, I think, one of the most impactful things that really unfolded um, me into what I'm still doing.
Yep.
So back in 2008, I had a dear friend and one of the most gentle, kind souls that I've known in life. He really struggled with something for about a year and a half, something spiritually related. Um, and we were all trying to help him. And unfortunately, nobody could. And eventually, he took his own life. He killed himself. Um, Now, that was very impactful on me. Obviously, it was very traumatic. It was also 2 days before I was supposed to be flying to Seattle from New York to spend time with my now husband.
Okay.
Him and I were doing cross country dating after meeting at Burning Man in 2007.
Love you. That's awesome. Oh.
So he takes his own life, and then it's this huge explosion of ripple effects and feelings. And I am standing there at his funeral, at the wake, and I'm doing a speech saying, well, he's in a better place now. And as soon as I say that, I suddenly very firmly and strongly know that no, he's not.
Ah.
That he got stuck. And I'm like, oh my God, I just told people he's in a better place and he's not. What do I do with it? Like, I was just, my mind was being blown in every direction. And so I quickly get through the funeral, and then I start feeling him. I start feeling him reaching out to me, because while he was still alive, I was one of the very few people that accepted his experience and his story of why he was suffering and struggling. And so I think he trusted me in life, and then it would make sense that he would trust me in his stuck place. And so I felt him reaching out to me and saying he's scared, he's stuck, he doesn't know where to go. There's just grayness there. It feels like nothing. He's afraid to go there. And I didn't I had no idea I had the ability to hear this stuff or to feel this stuff. I had no training in helping anybody cross over, but I just kind of went with my compassion and my gut, and I just kept saying, you have to go to the peace. Like, if you feel the peace anywhere in there, you just have to like go into the nothing. It's gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that went on for 2 days. In the meantime, I was flying to Seattle. I had a connecting flight in Vegas, of all places.
Yep.
My connecting flight did not connect. So the the plane company, they set me up in a hotel for the night. And that was the best thing that could have happened, because suddenly I was in this beautiful, clean, white space, white room where nobody was there. Nobody knew where I was, because everybody was going crazy and everybody was reaching out to me and trying to give me their support, where I just needed some space to dive in and take care of things and of myself. And so I'm in this white room, just being with me, my own grief, my own tragedy of the whole thing, and my friend Oleg and his journey with it. And he kept reaching out and kept saying, I don't want to go. And I kept saying, you have to go to the peace. And then finally, it's the next day, I'm on the airplane We're above the clouds. The plane is filled with sunshine. I got some sleep. And I feel him again, and I'm like, oh my God, not like I can't take this anymore. Like something's gotta give, but then I suddenly feel there's this very characteristic smile, blissful smile that I always feel from people who have made it to the other side. And I'm like, oh my God, he made it. He made, and I'm like, oh, like you made it. He goes, yes. I'm like, now. He goes, yes, now I know.
Oh,
yeah. And I get goosebumps still, and like I want to cry just thinking about it and talking about it. And
I want to cry just hearing it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And like everything is just lit up with sunlight, I'm like, oh my God, it's kind of hard to put into words. And we had a conversation for a while, and I don't really remember the rest of what we said, because the most impactful thing was like, now I know, and now
Now I know, exactly.
And that started me on this interesting journey of, so that happened. I guess I now know how that happens, and it can happen. The other part of me is like, okay, I'm probably crazy. I'm like that. What?
Many people listening to this will relate to that big time. Yep.
And then it also kind of sent me off on this journey of like trying to disconnect from a lot of things that were actually part of me, but now I was afraid to be that. And I really needed to ground into my just plain human experience and be human for a while without any other distractions. And but I was then followed by suicides for a while. More people. And I'm like, why does this keep happening? And I had a lot of resistance to it. I'm like, what? I didn't sign up for this. I said.
Little did you know you did,
right? A contract,
Exactly.
And it kept happening. And eventually I just had to surrender to just feeling my feelings. And every time it would happen, I would feel the compassion, because, with suicides, especially, there's so much stigma and judgment around them. And for me, I feel nothing but compassion when I think about these people. And so every time the floodgates would open and all this love would come through, and they would go where they need to go. And then eventually I accepted that, okay, this is part of my experience, apparently. And then I started receiving more information and messages from loved ones for my clients and friends who have lost their loved ones. And I mean, sadly, there was a lot of loss, both in my life and around me. But this, it is what it is. Point is I'm grateful to know how to be with it.
Absolutely. So you stepped into mediumship, and I think it's very beautiful. Suicide is always devastating and sad, but it's beautiful how you stepped into it with your friend. And that source of compassion just came pouring out of you.
Yeah. And I'm really grateful for that. And so the interesting thing specifically with Oleg is, quite recently, after doing the exercises from your Sage Method course, that specifically the exercise with meeting your guides, I decided to do that. And it was like I was going through the schedule with the course, and I was like, okay, then now it's time to do this exercise. And so I set up a space, and I called it all in, and I stood there with a piece of paper and a pen in my hand, and suddenly I knew Oleg was there.
Oh.
And it turned out that he's one of my guides, a big one. He showed me that now it all came full circle.
Yep.
That I pushed him through to the other side. Well, I didn't push him. I helped him go through, and then he pulled me up.
Yes, exactly.
And then he said, now just receive the love. And I stood there for a good 10-15 minutes, bathed in the most amazing feelings. I kind of hard to express and put into words. Not only that, I realized that he's one of my soulmates, a big one. And it's very interesting because in life, I wasn't very attracted to him like at all. He wasn't my type or anything like that, and we're just friends, and in on the other side, he's just the most beautiful, shiny, golden lit being, and who's also very sensual, which surprised a lot, which was very surprising for me. So
Yes, sensuality can be deeply connected to the higher vibrational energies.
yeah, but that really surprised me. I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
So just really grateful to be connected to that. And I have to say that finding your course and becoming a part of that, and then so like taking the crossing over course was like having 4.5 hours of continued validation where I was crying the whole time because everything you said in there was just, yeah, it was validating. It was making me feel like I wasn't crazy, and everything I experienced I actually did experience, and that these things do happen and this is how you deal with them. And yeah, it was just I the amount of gratitude I feel for you and what you're doing is boundless. And
Right.
how
Like,
grateful I am to have found you.
I am so grateful you did. I am so grateful you did. And this is I have so much that I relate to with you. Like I'm hearing some of my own story and some of these amazing experiences that you're talking about. What incredible experiences. And that's what the Sage Circle is all about, is not being alone with it. And I was, and then I moved forward and had moments where information was given to me and I felt like, I don't know, validated or heard, or, not alone. And that's what you experience with the crossing over course. And that, if that's the only thing that happened out of that course, that would be worth every single moment of it. I'm so grateful. I'm so
and,
grateful.
and there is a lot more that happened out of that course, and then every course that you're doing, again, everything that I'm learning from you is again either another validation or another push for me to keep doing what I'm doing and to keep on this journey, and just to keep going and believing in myself and the gifts that are coming through, and
That's a part of
having
it.
having this amazing community has been also like, a lot of people are feeling so isolated right now, and I mean that has an element in my life as well, just because I miss being with my friends and loved ones and doing my dance, because I used to be a part of a dance tribe here, and Zoom doesn't quite do it for me.
Nope,
But,
nope.
at the same time, having been connected to the Sage Circle community has been just such a joy and help, and yeah, it makes me exactly what you said. It makes me feel not alone. It makes me feel like there are people out there that I can share with that will understand and won't think that I'm crazy. And we can swap stories, and it's a lot of fun to do that as well. And just gratitude all over the place.
I one of my favorite parts of it, for me too, because I'm a member too, and so one of the parts for me is just being able to go somewhere where there's unconditional love. And that's a beautiful thing. It's an absolutely beautiful
Absolutely.
thing. So now tell me a little bit about how the experiences that you shared are so moving and so relatable, but tell me a little bit also about how do you use your intuition on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, so it's a constant process of constantly tuning in and listening very carefully inside into this vibrational space inside of me and all around me. Like you often mention that scene between the molecules.
Yes, the space
So
between the molecules. Yep.
yes, so it's for me, it's an ongoing, like every moment of every day, tuning into the place between the molecules, because that's the space that I trust more than anything else.
More than the solid. Yep.
Yes, and for me, um, intuition comes as very strong feelings most of the time. Like my yeses and my nos are usually very strong.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the gift of growing up in a place where I couldn't really be feeling my feelings is, I of course, the emotional integration has become one of my like big powers. And that's what I uh, try to help people with too. And so again, feeling my feelings, not denying anything that comes up, is what keeps um, my intuition alive and strong.
And flowing and
So,
letting it guide you.
yes.
I love that. I love
Every day I start my day with addressing source,
mm-hmm.
whatever we call it. But I, it's like this little affirmation mantra that came through to me through spirit, basically. And it's something along the lines of, I'm yours, you're mine, I'm in you, you're in me, your light and I are one. Thank you. I love you. And so I start the day with that. I end the day with that. This is what aligns me very deeply with that inside myself. And then I GCP. I
And
GCP.
I GCP.
I GCP religiously. I mean, that was one of the gifts that you gave me, Bo, is the GCP.
Oh, that
It's
tool.
indispensable. I don't know how I survived without it so far.
I felt the same way when I started using it. I thought, wow, I could have used this years ago.
Seriously. Yes, absolutely.
I think that's
Yes.
fantastic. Well, I would like to hear what advice would you give others walking on their spiritual path? Because you've had these big experiences that were so impactful. Um, you honor your intuition daily. I would love to know if you could give somebody just a nugget of advice, what would you tell them?
Have patience.
Have patience. Yes.
Patience. Trust yourself. Do not push the river. The river pushes you. You don't have to try to make it happen. As soon as you as soon as you let go a little bit of trying to control the whole thing, that's when it pours in and takes you where you need to be.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
and that's, it's something I have to remind myself every day as well. As much as I have all these big experiences and I do follow my intuition every day, this is also my like daily both mantra and a little bit of struggle sometimes, because I'm not the most patient person on the face of the planet.
I hear you there, Victoria. I hear you. I love it. Well, I'm grateful for the experiences that you've had, for your grandmother's guidance, um, for the guidance of your friend. I'm just so grateful that you're out doing this. And I also know that you do energy work as well. Um, and if it's okay with you, I would love to share that information with people as well so they can reach out, because sometimes just listening, someone will know that they resonate and that this is the right connection. And if they want to reach out to you, that would be absolutely wonderful. But how long have you been doing energy work professionally?
Professionally since year 2000, I believe. So
Yeah,
21 years.
21 years. Don't you love as you get older and you have to start like counting how
It's like,
long you've
oh,
been
what?
doing things?
Yeah.
Someone says, how long have you been teaching the Sage method? I'm like, oh, 15 years. And it just starts building and adding and adding. I
Yep.
love it so much. Well, thank you for coming on here. Thank you for sharing your life experiences with me. And thank you for being a part of this community.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing what you do, Bo. It's a blessing. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate it and I appreciate you.
You as well. Right back at ya.